cost-effective ways to streamline documentation. I know you have your program and really cool stuff, but what are some things that any of us that have clinics we could actually do today to just streamline the process?
Well, for my population, pediatric OTs, I can tell you the number one thing that I find that they do, that they don't need to do, is educate in their evaluations. So we're notorious for writing books.
Right.
I mean, spending hours writing up our evals because we want everybody to understand every little thing that we understand about the kid. And it's overwhelming. So as I work with people, the big aha is usually that statement. You don't have to educate in the report. You can educate with handouts. Doesn't mean don't educate them.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can educate with handouts. And so we educate, we have a list of things over the first 4 to 6 weeks of therapy that it's like a drip.
This is Secrets for Success.
Welcome to the Secrets for Success podcast. I'm your host, Greg Todd. I'm actually doing a series called Rapid Fire Value, and I'm bringing one of my amazing clients. You've actually worked with me for 4 years. So 4 years, nearly 5.
2120 was the
2120 challenge. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Mary Koska's on the podcast. Welcome again to the podcast. I had you on here a year ago, right?
I think so.
Yeah, about a year ago. So anyways, thank you for being on. So what I'm trying to do with this is I want to show people the value that the people that I work with bring to the world. Like I work with you guys, but you work with all these other people, right? So in your case, you have Ohana OT, which is your practice. But one of the things that I believe you could really help not only my audience with and so many others with is something that we deal with every single day, which is like we got to write stuff about the patients that we treat. And so you have another company called Docufast. You help lots of people with being more efficient and effective with their time, not just for them, but for their practitioners. And do you mind if I ask you some questions? Because this is obviously a big deal for people. All right. So the first question is, how can I reduce documentation time without sacrificing quality? Because I know for myself.
You mean quality of the documentation or the care?
The quality of the documentation.
Well, that's pretty easy. You just have to know what you need to be writing about, because people will actually write lengthy notes and not even have in the note what needs to be there.
Right.
So the length doesn't dictate the quality at all.
Gotcha.
So, for example, people might write a very lengthy play-by-play description. They came in, they said this, we did this, but there might be nothing that documents progress on the goals.
Right. I think for me.
Or clinical expertise.
Yeah, for me, I believe that whenever I would have longer notes, it would justify to me that it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of us feel that way. I mean, I'm not treating in a clinic anymore, but I think we think being verbose is going to be the key to us not getting audited or us having insurance continuing to allow us to treat the client. But that's not the case.
I have a friend that's expert witness, and he would see documentation get shredded apart. And he said people got into more trouble with the longer notes.
Wow.
Because there was just more stuff in there that didn't need to be in there that was distracting from the core of what needed to be in there.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. You have an occupational therapy practice. And besides documentation, that's not like the only thing you do. Like you run a company,
right?
And you're dealing with a lot of staff. So can we talk about staff, or like, I want to just talk about, documentation. So how have you been able to help to prevent burnout of your staff? I'm assuming documentation has something to do with it, not because that's not, to me, I call documentation that's like the hangover. Right?
Right.
Working with the patients is the fun stuff, right? But documentation is the hangover. But what are other things that you are doing to help your staff avoid burnout? And I think you do a really good job. So I kind of want to.
So not going into the document, I mean, because I do think that's a huge piece, because I talk to practice owners all the time, and So in our clinic, nobody takes any work home, and they leave. If they stay late, it's because they're just chatting and hanging out,
Right.
or
Okay.
maybe they're wanting to brainstorm on a kid. But the actual work is done. Like, they don't take any work home.
That is not the case for a lot of
No,
practices.
it's not. And it's not, because if you have a really efficient system, then they can be done within the session or right at the end of the session. But there's a whole lot of other things that we do. What's unique in my clinic, for pediatrics, it's unique. I know it's not that unique for like outpatient ortho, but we have techs, we have aides that help.
Right.
So a lot of things can be delegated to them. So they don't have to eat up as much time doing things like making a picture schedule or setting up or cleaning up. So having that support staff makes them not as tired at the end of the day.
Right.
I always say their job is to help the therapist not be so wiped out at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's a big piece. And then, we just do a lot of fun things. I think if your staff isn't laughing together, then they're going to get burned out. So we do, we have celebrations every month. We have a couple retreats a year. We have get-togethers. We just really make sure that we're bonded and having fun together.
I always love when you do your retreats and you kind of give us a retreat report on how the retreat went. I'm like, man, not to get too biblical, but I am going to say this. There is a book in the Bible, is Ecclesiastes, and it was written by King Solomon. And King Solomon said, this is supposedly the wisest man that ever lived, and was consulted to all the kings at that time. And he wrote Ecclesiastes after he wrote the book of Proverbs. And he said, really at the end of it, life is a lot of it is meaningless, but what's really the most important is that you actually have fun in your work. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And I really could say that for your practice, I feel like you guys have a lot of fun. And yes, you work hard, but you do a lot of cool things and a lot of fun. So I think you're doing it right. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I even had them breaking boards.
Wow. Look at that.
Fun.
That's awesome. Okay. Let's talk about this. How can you create a work environment that, and I guess we kind of already hit this, but like, how can we create a work environment that our staff doesn't dread coming to the workplace? So yes, you're doing the retreats, doing that, but what are other things that you're doing inside of your work environment? And one of them I know is documentation, like very quality and efficient documentation. But what are other things that you guys are doing to create that type of environment?
Well, I'm just thinking about something we're doing right now. Peer reviews,
Okay.
I think, are a big thing, because I think what makes not a good work environment is when little issues start to bubble up and then tensions start to rise, And so peer reviews have been a really good tool, because for one thing, they find out everything that their peers love about them, but they also get some tips for growth. And I know for me, it was a huge thing, because like for years, they kept saying, like, you need to listen more.
Yeah.
And I've always been a talker and not the best listener. And so it's helped me grow a lot. But I think you're going to have a better work day and look forward to coming into work when you know where you stand with people.
Right.
And I actually take, like, for Christmas, we make up a thing that says, like, what we love, it would be like, what we love about Greg. And it's just all the main words that people use. And it ends up being like something that I frame and they have in front of their desk. So they just know how much they're loved by their coworkers.
That's awesome.
And so that makes you look forward to coming to work, because you know where you're out with people.
Wow. Okay. I like that. Love that.
And also, I mean, I just feel like I have the ideal work environment. I worked in a lot of other environments where I didn't have the tools to do my job, the space to do my job, have the parents there, have enough time with the clients. So having a private practice basically just made my ideal working environment.
Okay. So as an entrepreneur, when I'm talking to you guys, I am telling you that I don't believe in work-life balance as an entrepreneur. I believe in seasons, right? I believe that sometimes I have a season of lots of work and very little play. Sometimes I have a season of very little work and lots of play. That's not how most employees look at it. They want a work-life balance. And I would love for you to share some strategies for how you've been able to improve work-life balance for your staff.
Well, it's interesting. We do a 4-10 schedule,
Okay.
which is a lot sometimes. It's a long day, and sometimes on those days it's hard to feel that way because it's a big day.
Right.
But we have every single weekend, we have 3-day weekends, which I absolutely love. So my staff are all pretty active, and so they go on camping trips and just they're really active and have a lot of fun on the weekends. So we kind of have this balance of work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the crew I have.
Okay.
They like that, most of them. And some maybe work a little bit less hours because that's not really a good fit for them. But
Gotcha. Okay.
most of them, that's what they prefer.
Okay. Your staff seems to be quite motivated and engaged.
Mhm.
A lot of people feel like their staff is not motivated and engaged, and maybe at times it might be due to high documentation demands.
Mhm.
What would you say to them? What are some things that they can do to keep their staff motivated and engaged?
Listen to them. That's the big lesson that I've learned is survey them, listen to them. One of the things that we usually do it twice a month, is we do a clinical mastermind, which actually I don't know anybody else that does it.
Yeah.
And I modeled it after our business masterminds. That what I have them do is they have to come in with a share, like something that's working to share with other people, and then an ask of the group. And then, so that gives them an opportunity to brainstorm the harder kids, which now I forgot what your question was, but
Yeah, like how to navigate through not just their work-life balance, but just the demands of the workplace.
demands.
And you're doing that through the clinic.
So I would say the thing that my staff love their kids and care about the families and care about just doing like a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
So the challenge I have is they're so hard on themselves.
Gotcha.
And if they have and all of our kids are challenging because we're seeing the kids nobody else knows how to help, right?
Yeah.
And so what I find is that they're having, if they have a really hard kid and they're having trouble, they're not making the kind of progress they want or whatever it is, that's when it gets hard for them. And so giving them the support is where it really makes a difference. So
What you're doing.
I've got 36.
Yeah.
I've got 36 years of experience. And so what we have a system, a daily check-in system that really helps. And this is pretty unique. Other than people that I've taught, I don't know anybody that does this. So it has all their kids and they check off how the session was, like if it was excellent, good with challenges, or very hard. They're highlighted at the end of the day, and then how they felt at the end of the day. They felt energized, they felt good, productive, they felt tired, or they felt completely wiped out. And I actually started this process because I didn't realize that one of my therapists was getting burned out, but it was really a scheduling thing. She had too many of the hard kids clustered. So we look at it from lots of different points of view. Like we're looking at it for scheduling to make sure not all one person's getting the hardest kids, or that they're not all on the same day, or they're not on, just spread it all out. But the other thing is then I can go back and I can say, hey, do you want to brainstorm on this kid? Do you need some help with this kid?
Yeah.
Or was it just a tough day? And then they have a place at the bottom where they can ask questions. So even if I'm gone, I was just on a trip to Okinawa, I can come back and I can know exactly how every single session went for these guys, and I can come back and offer support. And I have an excellent lead OT, Kylan, and so we're both able to support them in that way. And then we meet with them one-on-one at least once a month anyway to just help them. So they've got the clinical masterminds, they've got the daily sheets, and they got the one-on-ones. And that's something I never had. I never had somebody to help me when I was stumped on a kid or what to do. And they have so much support that way.
I think that could help not only extremely ambitious therapists like what Mary has, but even for younger therapists that may not even be as motivated and whatnot. There's nothing worse than feeling like you don't have any support when you're stuck with somebody. So I think those are brilliant things. Now, let's move to documentation a little bit. Cost-effective ways to streamline documentation. I know you have your program and really cool stuff, but what are some things that any of us that have clinics we could actually do today to just streamline the process?
Well, for my population, pediatric OTs, I can tell you the number one thing that I find that they do that they don't need to do is educate in their evaluations. So we're notorious for writing books.
Right.
I mean, spending hours writing up our evals because we want everybody to understand every little thing that we understand about the kid. And it's overwhelming. So as I work with people, the big aha is usually that statement. You don't have to educate in the report. You can educate with handouts. Doesn't mean don't educate them.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you can educate with handouts. And so we educate, we have a list of things over the first 4 to 6 weeks of therapy that it's like a drip. So we're going to give them this handout on this day, this handout on this day. And if they're seeing different people, it's been checked off. So we know, oh, we gave them the prop handout. They know about activities they can do for that. Because it's too much to get it all at one time anyway.
Right.
And so I'd say like the biggest hack is at least for peds OTs, we want to educate so much, but we overwhelm them and then we end up writing up too much. And it's too long of a report. So if you just separate it and do it as handouts.
That's really good. I like that.
It's a big time saver.
Yeah. Okay. So I know there are quite a few people that know that their documentation kind of stinks. Okay. And they could do things a lot better. And I know that you have, a program that actually helps with that. But I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are like, okay, I know I need to do this. I actually want to do it. But how am I going to get my people on board with this? So what's some tips and advice that you have for those that know that they need to put some new documentation strategies in play, but they're trying to get everybody on board?
Well, it starts at the top. And I can tell you that most practice owners don't have a good system in place because they're not confident. And I have a very distinct moment in my career, 20 years into my career, working in a birth to 3, looking at my note. You know how you said you felt like, oh, it's good enough, it's long?
Yeah.
I was looking at my note and I'm like, I don't have any way to know if this is good enough. I have never had anybody tell me anything about, if my notes were good or not. And I'm like, how do I not know? And so that kind of began my quest of really learning and finding out. But what I have is a rubric. So it's like, if these 7 things are in your note,
And you're good.
then you're good.
Gotcha.
It doesn't matter how many words. But that is, did I answer the question?
Yeah.
I'm trying
No.
to think of exactly what the question was. But
Yeah.
but that to me is a big thing, is just having like knowing like you need to have, some numbers in there, like reps or percentage or, not just words, but you have to show some like measurable progress on the goal, show that you worked on the goal that's in the plan.
Right.
What goal did you work on? What was the progress? What was your part? That's a big thing people leave out is they leave out the therapist's intervention because we just kind of take it for granted, like how much, we don't forget in rehab, but like it's just the basics. Like, did you do tactile cueing, verbal cueing? Did you grade the activity? Did you, how much physical assist did you provide? It's pretty simple to show skilled care.
Right.
But for some reason, especially in peds, we kind of just forget to put that part in. So show the progress, show the, the skilled part, and
that's what gets the staff to get on board to do this new documentation.
That was the question. Sorry, I got a little off track.
Yeah.
So my point was, it starts at the top, because if you're not confident, how are your therapists going to be? So you have to create the samples. You have to create the rubric. You have to say, this is the clear expectation, But as far as people not wanting to change, like say you create that, so you're confident and you're like, this is how what I'm expecting.
And they're still fighting.
And then they're still fighting. Now they're fighting because of fears. There's a lot of different fears, but it's the basic thing of like our brains don't like to change,
Right.
you know?
Right.
But they have fears of not sounding professional, not doing it the way I was taught in school. What if we're audited? But the first thing they have to do is figure out the first module in my program is for them to figure out where their fears are coming from. And mine were coming from like 10 different places.
Right.
So I had one gal that she was up till 1 to 2 in the morning every night doing her notes. Because I have them do a time audit. Like, how much time are you actually spending on documentation a week? And how many weeks of your life is that in a year?
Right.
And her number was just astronomical. And she realized her fear or her overcompensation was because her boss went to jail for fraud.
Wow.
He was a chiropractor and she didn't do anything wrong, but he billed PT when she wasn't even there.
Right.
And he didn't throw her under the bus. He admitted his guilt and all of that. But because of that, she was constantly overcompensating, even though she never did anything wrong. So people have to kind of find out what are they afraid of before they can change.
Right.
And it's always some kind of fear-based thing.
I think there's a mindset thing as well. And this was for me when I was treating. And that is, if I decrease my documentation time, that means that my care sucks.
That's interesting.
Yeah. If my documentation time is less, for some reason, and I know I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people feel that.
Yeah.
So,
I think the care gets better. I know it gets better.
I mean, it just makes sense logically that I would have more time to work with the person.
But the reason why it gets better is, all right, say, you've seen all these people, so you got to look at your note from last time to see what you were going to do, what you're going to do this time.
Yeah.
Well, if you got to wade through tons of stuff to read, it's a lot harder than just being able to, at a glance, be like, oh, yeah, okay, now we're going to do this. So you stay more focused.
Right.
When you're concise and you're more focused, your quality is better. I used to think like that, because we'll have our kids will have 15, 20 goals that we'll write, and we meet them all usually within about 40 sessions. But because you have that, sometimes you think, I got to work on 6 goals in this session.
Right.
But what I learned is that what you really need to do is focus in on 2 goals and make sure you hit those goals consecutively for at least 4 sessions in a row or 5 sessions in a row. And then you can start meeting them very quickly.
Gotcha.
But we are more scattered naturally, and we're like a little bit this, a little bit this, a little this, a little bit, and then we don't move as fast. That took me a long time to learn that. I kind of didn't believe it. I was being coached that way from one of my coaches before, and I was really in disbelief that my kids would get better faster that way, but they really do.
They do.
Because and it doesn't mean you can't do other things in your session, but the main point is that you're consistently focused on one goal.
Right.
So, for example, if I've got a goal for them to be able to have prone extension for 30 seconds, but I'm not truly addressing it every session, I'm not going to get anywhere.
Right.
Or if I'm going to have a goal of them being able to sit for 15 minutes doing tabletop activity, well, if we don't actually have that opportunity every session, or if I'm not focused on that, it's not going to happen.
So 2 main things.
2 main things.
4 sessions in a row.
At
Correct.
least.
At least 4
At
sessions.
least. And a lot of times it's about 8.
Yeah.
But if we're not progressing, if we're not seeing progress, then we move to something else. And whenever my staff are wondering, well, what goal should I pick next? I say, look at it, and the next one you think you're going to meet should be your next goal.
Okay. Gotcha.
And then sometimes they've already met some of those goals, and we just have to give them credit. Because once they start getting those foundational skills, then they just start naturally meeting a lot of goals.
Right. So here's my next question. What should people consider before investing in their next documentation software?
Like an EMR, you mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have yet to find the best one, by the way.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of things.
Well, let's talk about.
I could tell you about my dream EMR that doesn't exist yet.
I want to hear it.
So,
Hey, if I have any PMR people that are listening, here you go. Or someone that wants to create a SaaS, a software, and you've always wanted, it's like, you know what? I think I create an EMR. Listen up, because this lady helps so many people that are practice owners. Okay, what's the perfect EMR?
There's a lot of them that are close, but not close enough for me to be happy.
Okay.
Some basics. Absolutely, to speed things up, you have to be able to have like checkbox, drop-down menu, and customization, and be able to eliminate anything you don't need to look at.
Okay.
So one of the really, I shall not name, to not throw them under the bus, but one really popular EMR that a lot of pediatric therapists use, you can't get rid of the stuff you don't need. So it takes you down all these rabbit holes and makes you feel like you need to fill in boxes that you don't need to fill in. So it has to be customizable so that you're only looking at what you need to look at. You have click boxes and drop down menus, that sort of, so you can just go do
Right.
and
Right.
be very quick. For me personally, my dream EMR has a way that I can, more like a flow sheet, where I can see side by side the last 4 sessions.
See the progress.
So I can just kind of see like, oh, that's the goal we were targeting, and this is how we were doing. Because the problem with slowing people down is reading a lot of narrative.
Right.
Instead of being able to spatially look at things.
Right.
So that's one thing. Obviously, it has to be super great with billing, and all of that has to be really clean. I like the flexibility of the one I'm using now. The reason I chose it is because the billing can happen through the front desk instead of the note.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it gives me so the billing doesn't get hung up by the notes being behind. Okay. But our notes don't get behind anyway. We just have a system in place so the therapist is still telling them how many units to bill.
Right.
But it's the only one that I know that you can do it this way,
okay.
And that's what I like.
Well, if any of you were listening, there you go. You have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, obviously you need to be able to have templates and all of those things, and not a lot of clicking around. Not so many clicks.
Okay.
Is when you're just like, it's just.
Now, you don't have the perfect EMR. We're not going to name it. It's obviously good enough, but good enough to deal with, but not the perfect.
I'm actually doing a hybrid of things right now. Okay. Because I use jot forms so that for my reports, because I can do the customization, and then I upload that into my EMR.
To your EMR. Gotcha.
Which is an extra step. I don't do it. My support staff does it.
Right.
But I can write my evals in 10 minutes.
Gotcha.
And, to me, I'd rather be that fast and then have somebody upload it.
Right.
But yeah, but in my system, I'm really just saying like, this is how to be concise. This is what needs to be in there. It's templates.
Right. Let's talk a little bit more about documentation and staff. I think documentation inefficiency creates so much unnecessary staff turnover. Have you seen that?
Not in my clinic.
Not in your clinic.
No.
With the clients, the people that you have such a big network of pediatric therapists.
The clinic owners that I talk to, they've had a lot of staff that leave due to, just burnout of having to take work home, and they're coming to me because they don't want it to be like that anymore.
Okay. I know we've talked about these numbers a little bit. Remember the other day we were talking about $50,000 like of what people are losing. I mean, in order to bring on, I think you shared with me with your clinic, when you bring on someone, it takes about 6 months. Am I right? To get them
so
speed.
So just numbers. In my clinic, because we do so much training, because we do so much with primitive reflexes and sensory integration, unless somebody has been doing that kind of work, the average pediatric OT, even if they have 20 years experience, we have to train them still. So it's really, and that's why we started a residency program, because you were like, Mary, you're doing a residency.
Yeah.
So call it that.
Yeah.
But they don't get to full caseload till about 3-4 months.
Okay.
And so, you're kind of losing money those first few months. It's 6 months to be like where you've made up that difference.
Okay.
And so turnover is really expensive, but then you have to add in if you're doing relocation bonus, if you're doing a sign-on bonus. I figure it costs me about $20,000 with every new hire minimum or more, plus the lost revenue while you're trying to fill that spot.
So if you took the $20,000 for a new hire and you took that amount for lost revenue, what would you say that total amount is?
It depends how many months, but it could easily be another $8,000 a month.
$8,000 a month.
I would say easily.
So let's just say, you guys, that.
And I'm talking about that $8,000. I'm talking about like, all right, if somebody's highly productive beyond their expenses, they're gonna be bringing in between like $60,000 to $100,000 to your clinic to pay for everything in your clinic.
Gotcha.
Beyond what they cost. It depends how productive they are and how much they cost, right? But on the high end, it's usually, it could be like around 100,000. It could be as low as 50 to 60. It all depends.
Okay.
So divide that by 12 is where I came up with that
Right.
number.
Okay.
But
I hope everybody's really listening to this, because this is right now, I mean, we talked about this ad nauseum. So many of you as practice owners, you're losing money, and your biggest issue, and you know it, is staff recruitment and staff retention. It's one thing to recruit, it's another thing to retain. And if we can say that documentation is a huge component of us retaining people, I need you guys to listen up to everything that Mary has said so far. We've got to make it seamless. You've got to make it as simple as possible. There is no perfect EMR out there yet. Okay.
So maybe somebody's gonna make it.
Yeah, maybe somebody's listening that's gonna make it. Okay. But we need to look at the things that we have control over, right? I've talked to you guys in our group about contributing factors and determining factors. Okay. All right. There's certain things that can contribute to someone coming and going. Okay. They can contribute. It is our responsibility to take away as many of those contributing factors as possible. If you're just being lazy with your documentation and making it harder on people just because you don't want to change, you're losing people. And according to what you have said to me, it's somewhere between on the low end $30,000 and on a high end $100,000, depending on how long it takes you to replace that person.
Yeah, if it took you a year.
This is brutal. So
Yeah.
So yes, I know it's hard to change. I know it's hard to bring something in new, but these are reasons why people are leaving you. And the reality is that most practices, whether it's PDOT practices, outpatient, really doesn't matter. Most people aren't addressing the documentation issue. And it is the fastest way that you can get people back more of their time.
Yeah.
Because we all know everybody's seeing patients.
And it's really not their fault, because it's not easy stuff to find out.
Right.
Like the insurance contracts do tell you what needs to be in a note, but it is buried deep.
Right.
So it's not, I mean, it's easy. Like I've made it easy. I wish I had something like what I provided, but
Right.
it took a lot of like just learning, because I've won all my appeals, and I've learned a lot through doing that. And sometimes it's just the stupidest little things that they kick a note back for.
Well, you said something earlier, and you're like, none of my staff take home their work. So I would like to ask you this question. How did you create this culture? Because you've created a culture of fun, and I don't want to act like Mary's like the perfect. I mean, she's really good. All right. She's got problems too. All right. But you've created an amazing culture, made a culture of fun, but you've also created a culture of efficiency. Like what?
Well, I can tell you something that I've done to help with
Please.
is that I have a checklist. I think it's like 25 things of what a great session looks like.
Okay.
Every single little thing. So just time-wise, how you run your session, what you do when,
Yeah.
things like making sure you address the two goals, involving the parent at the end so that you can finish up, so you can write your note, get it done, like have them play a round of the game that's at the end of the session or whatever, but I mean, it's like in detail.
Right.
And our clinic is run so like on time, like nobody waits. And the thing is, our kids can't wait because a lot of them melt down and stuff.
Right.
So from the time they walk into the lobby to the time they're in their session is never more than like 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So everything just runs like on the, I don't know, it's kind of like, I'm going to say like military, but that's not really like the best way to say it. But it's, one thing that we do is we have a really cool system, kind of like a bell system, but it's a song that plays as a warning, like 3 minutes before it's time to leave the room.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we have like this gentle Hawaiian music that comes on, and then everybody knows that like, okay.
So it's like on the hour?
It's
like
it's like 3 minutes
3 minutes
before the end of the session, and then the end of the session it's Moana, make way, and that means you better be making your way to the lobby.
Right. Oh, wow.
And then, but it's a little bit before the session would normally end because most of our kids struggle with transitions, so transition is part of the session. So we allow like another 5 minutes is the transition because they don't want to stop, they don't want to end, they're figuring out like one more way to sneak in a little more fun. And the parents all of a sudden they have 10 questions. So we allow that transition time and we explain it to them is part of the session. And that's where a lot of people get off track in peds anyway, because these kids don't transition well. So we have that as part of it. So the bell system comes a little early just to get everybody moving. And then that way the rooms can get cleaned up and everything.
You guys, this is a culture of efficiency. I mean, I've run.
Yeah, we're
clinics
85. We're like 85% productive.
Yeah, this is pretty impressive. I mean, I thought we were doing a good job, but maybe you're doing better than me. Okay. Can I ask you 2 more questions? Is that cool?
Of course.
All right. So there are people out there, they're struggling. They know they need to do something. They know that internally they need to fix some stuff. And they know that documentation might need to be one of those things. So my question is, what are some of the signs that my documentation process might need an overhaul?
Well, I think like if it's not efficient.
Yeah.
I mean, if people are taking it
You don't
home.
take it home, work.
I mean, the thing is like I have this calculator, and that's how I know that people can save anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000 a year because they do this calculator with them all the time. And so it depends how many staff you have and how much time. But if you're taking 2 hours, most people are taking like an hour and a half, 90 minutes to write an eval up in OT peds. I don't know if you know that.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
And
yes.
you're doing it in 10.
10 to 15.
Wow.
And so that's the difference. And notes, a lot of clinics, they're not taking as much time. But, if you take 10 to 15 minutes to write a note compared to 3 to 5, that's still a really big difference.
Right.
That's the difference of being able to kind of do it at the end of your session real quick
Right.
before they go versus having to block out an hour at the end of the day to do all your notes. If it's taking you longer, if you can't get it done. So the difference with that, if they're paying their staff to document, is that much money for the average size small clinic.
Right. That's nearly 8 times more time compared to what you're doing. 10 minutes versus 80 to 90 minutes.
Well, I was the other extreme when I started my private practice because I got SI certified, and the test for that takes like 3 hours to do it, 17 tests, and takes 2 hours to score and takes 3 hours to write up. So I was spending like, what is that, like 10 hours or something. And I'm like, I'm getting paid for what, a half an hour, 45 minutes for that time. So I just very quickly was like, I can't do it the ideal way. So I had to learn, how do I gather the same information that I need in an efficient way write it up in an efficient way, and the quality of my therapy is still just as good.
Wow.
But so I have written like 44-page evals before.
Wow. Jeez.
But you know what? For a long time I had this little phrase in there. This is a summary eval. Write up if you need more detail, because I had trouble letting go of what I was letting go of, and if you need any more information, let me know. 2 years went by, not a single person, not a single doctor, not a single parent ever asked me for more than I gave them. And I forgot that phrase was in there. And then one day a parent said, a mom said, "Oh, is there more stuff?" I mean, she didn't even care. She just saw that in there. And then I'm like, "Oh, it's time to take that out." And our top referring physician, she's the main person that would diagnose a child with autism in our valley. And she was showing her medical assistant in our clinic. She was touring it, and I was putting this course together. And I thought, oh, this is a great opportunity to ask her if there's anything she'd like to see me do differently. And I asked her about the evals, because she sees a gazillion of them from me. And she writes super long, detailed, and takes all her work home and writes big reports. So I thought, oh, I'll just ask her anything you'd like me to do differently in my reports. And she just thought about it, and she's like, "Nope, they're good." She goes, "I just wish you were in our AMR so we didn't have to upload it."
Wow.
That's all. I mean, but I thought, wow, because she's person that writes a lot. Yeah, she writes down like every little detail of what she sees. So yeah, it took me years to kind of be okay with how I do it, or it's just letting go of the known and what you think is right.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you.
You're
I do have one more question for you.
Mhm.
You just came back at the time of this recording. You just came back from a 4-week trip to Okinawa, Japan.
Yeah. Well, I was traveling for like 3 weeks before I came here, and then this is 1 week.
This is one.
Yeah. I was like about 2 weeks in Okinawa.
About 2 weeks. Okay. So you've been away from your clinic
Mhm.
for nearly 4 weeks.
Yeah. When I go back, it'll be 4 weeks.
4 weeks. And your clinic hasn't burned down
Mm-mm.
yet. Okay.
There were good things happen and bad things happen, but I will say that with one thing that happened, they handled it really well.
Okay.
I was really impressed.
So I'm assuming everybody that's listening to this wants that.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't need to go through all of that. I think we've gone through a lot
Mhm.
in this rapid fire episode. But what would you say to that person that has a practice? They're like, geez, I kind of want that. I want the staff that is excited to hang out with each other. I would love to have the staff that would do retreats. I would love to have the staff that want to actually hang out on the weekend and go camping. I want to have the staff that's efficient and effective. And I want to be able to build all that stuff that she's built. But we know that that's taking time. So what would you say would be the first step? First step to building an efficient, quality-based practice that's eventually going to still serve people at a high level, but do it in a quality-based way. What would you say is the first step?
Well, it's hard to say what the first step is, but I would say in general, have really clear expectations and put systems in place.
Okay.
And invest in your staff. Invest in taking and invest that time into doing the fun things. So like when we do a retreat, half the day is fun and half is work. But obviously, like most people can't afford to do that right away.
Yeah.
But at least take one staff meeting, once a month to celebrate them, celebrate the birthdays, celebrate the anniversaries, like acknowledging people, that making sure they're valued, like making sure that they know that you care.
I think there's two big things you said: invest in systems and invest in people. If you want to have efficiency, but you want this thing to be sustainable, efficiency only happens with systems, and efficiency and being sustainable happens with systems, but also happens with people. And so I think It's two amazing things. Invest in systems, invest in people. I'll do a soft little, not ask, but if any of you are interested in starting with the system of documentation, and you are spending 60, 70, 80, 90 minutes on doing your evals, and you want to tighten that up, I personally feel like it is probably the fastest fix to getting things tightened up, because it's something that you have to do with every single client,
Yeah.
right? Every single client you're doing that with. So
Yeah, it's a daily thing. I think the thing that's so gratifying to me is just over and over I hear life-changing.
well,
Life-changing.
because
And
it is.
it is. And but
It
the
is.
thing is, like, I never planned. I don't like documentation. I never planned to like be this like person that's helping everybody with documentation. I just got good at it because I don't like it.
Right.
So I didn't want to spend any more time on it. But I'm also very perfectionistic, want it to be high quality, want it to, pass an audit. And, I'm very much that way too.
Right.
So anyway, it's just a problem I solved for myself. But it came out of that, the group that I did, the Facebook group, when I was helping people through the pandemic and everything. And then I realized, I'm like, what else do you need help with? And that's how it kind of evolved.
Well, it's awesome.
Because that's how I found out that people were struggling. I'm like, oh, I can help you with that.
Love it. Love it. Well, you guys, I hope that helped you. Hope to help you in some way with regards to your practice,
Yeah.
your staffing, documentation, how to keep people motivated, how to create a culture. I think we talked about a lot of different things. Here's what I'm going to do. In the description section, you're going to see Mary's Docufast program. That's her main documentation system. That's her system of how she has gone from 90 minutes on an evaluation assessment to now 10. And what's so cool is that she's been able to not only do it for herself and her clinic, but she's helped lots of other practice owners do this as well. So anyways, you'll see that somewhere, and you can check out more of her stuff. So thank you, Mary, for being on. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
That was easy.